Hi, and welcome to video number 2. In this video, you're going to learn the different types of webinars so you can get a good idea of what kind of webinars are available to you and what kind of webinars you can create for yourself so you can promote your products or your services. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to talk about are the general types of webinars. So as you can see here, there are 3 different types. And within the 3 different types, there's actually many different specific types of webinars. So what I'm going to do is talk about this, and then we'll dig deeper and I'll talk about the specific types of webinars. Now, as you can see with this red line here, you have live webinars, which can be a lot more interactive. So you can call them live webinars or interactive webinars. Now, what these webinars allow you to do is because they're live, think about if you go to a live webinar, you have the ability to ask questions about the topics, or even let's say the speaker promotes a product and you ask a question that relates to the product. Now, the best thing to do is if you're going to do, let's say for example, replays, I would suggest that you do a live webinar first. Get people to ask as many questions as possible, because most of the time if somebody asks a question, somebody else is thinking that same question. So if you do have a live webinar and you have people that don't ask a lot of questions, that might be bad if you try to do a webinar replay in the future. So it would be wise to get people that ask a lot of questions. But live webinars are great because you get people their questions answered, and that could be a roadblock between you selling them the product or they buying the product or not. Then we have this orange line here, which are replays. Webinar replays are basically webinars that you have already created in the past, and you are basically automating the webinars. Now, most people will not know that you are replaying the webinars. However, you can do this and it works and it's great. Now, just keep in mind though that the webinar replays are non-interactive. So that means that people cannot ask questions and answers and get the answers. But like I said, if you do the red line first and then you do the orange line second, sometimes that works really well. With the green line, you have the Q&A, which is the questions and answers. So let's say, for example, that you want to create a product, or you have a product and people have purchased the product, and you have that webinar as the intent to help people ask questions and you answer their questions. So those are great ways to create webinars. Q&As can also, you could take a Q&A, you could have an expert, have everybody ask tons and tons of questions. You could sit there for an hour and a half or 2 hours or 3 hours and just answer a bunch of questions. You could take that and turn it into an actual product. You could take that and turn it into transcripts, take the transcripts and turn it into an ebook, into a report, split it up. There's so many things that you could do to take a webinar, because as long as you have that content, the content is what matters, because that's what educates people and that's what helps people to learn. Now that you understand the general types of webinars, let's move on to the more specific types of webinars. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to list a bunch of webinars and I'll talk about each type of webinar. Now, just keep in mind that even though I'm only listing a certain amount of specific types of webinars, that's not to say that there are hundreds of other ideas and types of webinars out there, but these are primarily to help you get started. All right, so we got introduction to new technology, or introduction to new product line or something. So you could have a webinar to introduce new technology. Let's say you're coming out with a new technology, software product, computer product, car product, or anything like that. The webinar in this specific case would be specifically to build up curiosity or act like a pre-launch, because you're not necessarily promoting anything in the webinar right now, but you might be promoting something in the webinar in, let's say, a year, 2 years, or a few months later. Another type is promotion of a product or service. Now you'll see some stuff on the bottom, but you can ignore that for now. I'll talk about that in a minute. But promotion of a product or service. This is pretty much the most popular specific type of webinar, because most people want to promote their product or they want to promote their service. In this case of webinars, you will find people basically providing as much educational material as possible, but you basically want to say, hey, I've got this cool product. It can make your life easier, you can save time, you can save money, and so forth. So that's a specific type. Or another thing you can do is promote a webinar class. Let's say, for example, that you have a bunch of webinars that are coming up in the future. You could create one webinar to give people enough material that they're going to want more. So let's say, for example, you have a class that's coming up on Facebook marketing and you want to teach people the basics of Facebook marketing. But instead of teaching the basics of Facebook marketing, you could be teaching, the basics, plus you could show people what you can do with Facebook marketing and what you have done with Facebook marketing, because a lot of webinars sell because people want to know from you, the expert or the speaker. Okay, so similar to the introduction to new technology, you could also have a webinar that has a pre-launch of an upcoming product. So basically, let's say, for example, that you have an upcoming product, you haven't released it yet, but you want to build up enough curiosity and pre-launch and get that people on the advanced notification list so that when you do launch that product, people are ready to buy. So that could be another specific type of webinar. Another thing is to get feedback from your customers. Now, a way to strengthen your relationship with your customers is to have a webinar where you can get with your customers, answer any questions that they have, get some feedback from your customers. Let's say you have a software product and you want to meet up with your customers, get some feedback on what they're looking for, what their problems that they're facing, and how you can help them. And guess what? You strengthen that relationship with your customers. They're more willing to buy from you in the future when you do promote a product. And another type of webinar is to strengthen your alliances with your business partners and with your customers. And strengthening with your customers, you can have one where you can get feedback from your customers, but also address any concerns that they might have. Another type of webinar is educating your customer. Let's say a customer bought a product or a service, but they need to know more information on how to use it. You might provide some tutorials and videos, or you can provide some tutorials, but some additional webinars so that you can answer any questions that they might have. But also, if you do this, this will actually help you strengthen your relationship with your customers as well. Another specific type of webinar is customer relationship building. Now, I showed you different types of ways to build a relationship with your customers, educating them, addressing their concerns, and so forth. Now, you can take that one step further and address the concerns, figure out what you can do to improve your relationship with your customer. Or you could also do things like create webinars that help add on to the product, and let's say 3 months down the line you do another webinar, and you keep doing that and over to continually build a relationship with your customer. Because think about it, after several months, usually your customer relationship will drop down, especially if you don't have as much interaction with them. And another thing you can do is do a pre-launch, like I said earlier, but you can do a demo of a product. Let's say there are many different ways to do pre-launches, but in this case, you could demo a product, show them the product, or show them snippets of the product and show what they can do and benefits of the product. And then maybe don't get everything, don't show everything, but use that as a means to pre-launch your product. You can use webinars to recruit partners, joint venture partners, affiliates